if the key to resilience isn't avoiding life's mud puddles, but driving straight through them? Welcome to PhD with Woman on It Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by Laura Elliott. Topic: storytelling that matters, uplifting voices that need to be heard. Episode 184 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical for storytelling. In this episode of Positivity Hack Delivered, we sit down with Laura Elliott, a USA Today and Wall Street Journal best-selling ghostwriter, award-winning screenwriter, and daughter of an immigrant. Laura will share the riveting story behind her memoir. We'll also explore the metaphor of the mud puddle, those messy, unavoidable life moments we all try to swerve around. From mental toughness and choosing joy to trusting in your inner wisdom, Laura offers insights drawn from her personal and professional life, helping others tell their most vulnerable stories. Whether you're navigating a personal upheaval or seeking inspiration to write your story, this conversation will move you to see your own life in a new light. Laura, where in the world are you joining us from?
Hi, Beata. I am in Santa Cruz, California, on the shores of Monterey Bay.
Beautiful location. I'm joining from Warsaw, and this is a recording, so unfortunately, no live questions today. However, let me start with the memoir question because it centers on the mud puddle metaphor, those messy moments we try to avoid. Can you share a time when plunging into this proverbial mud puddle revealed a hidden strength you didn't know you had?
Well, yes, I can. There have been so many times where I felt like there was a big challenge, which is the metaphor for the mud puddle. I, in my own life, had to persevere. I think it's very common that we have to be our most courageous when we're at our weakest. And when we're weak, we're a little bit fearful, and for me specifically, in the memoir that's coming out in August about me and my dad, I was telling his story about being a prisoner in World War II and the truth behind his experience when I also had my life fall apart and I was trying to get over divorce of 28-year marriage. And I had to bring all of my courage through that experience to see the opportunities that were there for me, even though maybe I would have thought, oh, I don't have enough money to research this story because it's in Asia, in Indonesia, in Japan, and in foreign countries from where I was, and oh, I need to do this, I need to get a job, I need to have all these things, my ducks in a row. And so I was frightened. What is my future going to be? I had heartache. I didn't trust myself in terms of love. I thought I knew what love was. Now I don't know what love is. And you just freeze. And sometimes instead of going ahead and getting through this turmoil, you go to the side, you go somewhere else, you try and take a shortcut. And in Africa, I had learned that a very wonderful lady named Michelle Telford was telling a story about living in Tasmania. And it was a metaphor for me to get through this time. And basically what happened was they would be living as, a family, and there would be terrible storms and terrible rains, and there'd be this huge mud puddle that they would come across in the bush, in their Jeeps. And they really had no other way. They couldn't go around it, because if they went around it, the mud on the edges it's very, very sticky. And so the Jeep would get stuck on the edges, right? So going around, even though it's very tempting because the middle is very scary, you don't know how deep it is. Going around it is sort of you think it's a sure thing, but you'd get stuck and you'd be there for days and have to abandon your car. But when you go through the middle, the water has really compacted the soil. So the best way to go through is to just drive through and just take a breath and go. And I found that to be true in my own life, whether it was heartache, whether it was financial upheaval, whether it was not thinking I knew how to do something or I wasn't qualified to do something. I realized that it really is time to go through the mud puddle, to just go through it, get through that dark time and make the best of it and learn from it, learn from this dark season. There's a book that I would really recommend for those times. It's called Learning to Walk in the Dark by Barbara Brown Taylor. That really helped me make friends with the mud puddle, essentially, of that time where you feel like, why am I in this darkness? I don't understand. I don't deserve to be here, maybe. Or there's a lot of these stories we tell ourselves about it, but there's a lot of lessons that can be taught in this uncertainty, in this time where you just really don't know what's coming next. It's okay to learn and be taught from these moments. And so that's what really has helped me, is getting through the mud puddle.
During World War II, soldiers coined the term foxhole courage to describe resilience under fire. How does your father's journey mirror your own battles with life's chaos?
That's very interesting. We have so many similarities. I think, the title of the book is Dear Laura, A Lost Chapter of World War II, a father-daughter adventure of courage, faith, and freedom. And courage is one of those words. We equally both had adventures and courage. Dad's adventure, he was not a U.S. serviceman. He was a young boy when he was taken prisoner in Indonesia. I'll show you where the story takes place, because it's this part of the world in Asia. And my family was living in the Dutch East Indies, which is down here on a little island called Java that was captured by Japanese. And so he was taken when he was 17, and he was in prison for 3.5 years. That's where the story starts, though. It's a much bigger story than that. His courage came in joy. My dad was very joyful and very full of grace. And so he never let his light be extinguished, no matter what that looked like. And for him, at the end of the war, he was 80 pounds, 6'2". So it sounds like a sort of trite to try and say this in just a few minutes, but to say that his light never went out is truly amazing, because he helped people. He found a way to help people. He found a way to live his purpose, still even in prison. So we found meaning. And even though, his soul sort of was like, well, maybe this is going to be the rest of my life, and maybe I will die here in this prison. He still found joy in every day. And I would say even more joy, probably. He was always able to appreciate the smallest of things. He was an incredible gardener. I would never know why, but it was so that he could eat and grow food, so he wasn't ill in the camp. So, there were all these amazing traits that my dad had with incredible backstories. And one of the very simple things for me was to take inspiration from his courage in my own life, to have that kind of joy.
So you've ghostwritten for leaders and survivors. Your father was a survivor. What's the unexpected thread connecting all these stories, and how did writing them reshape your own understanding of courage?
Yeah, I think I write for minorities, women, and I really entrepreneurs, and also for uh, you know marginalized people. And I think the common thread really is that we always start in a place of not really understanding how powerful we really are. And it's the story of understanding and using that power to great effect. Um, I think most people that come to me start with an idea of what their story is. And what I really do is I help them understand themselves better so they can understand their message better, so that they can make a greater impact in the world. I think we understand ourselves to a certain point, but it's hard to see the larger themes of our story. And that's what I have the gift of doing is I have the gift of being able to say, wait, this is a much larger story. You made a decision here. There's a decision there. Let's look at that and uncover it. So the story ends up becoming much bigger, usually and typically, than the story that's often told. And this is even true, obviously, in business. I mean, every story is an emotional ride. You are different at the end than you are at the beginning. And definitely every story, even if it's a business story, is a little bit memoir. I mean, there's a reason why we're drawn to the industries we are. There's a reason why we want to serve the people that we are serving. There's a reason why we want to use our voice. And this is another very common thing in all the books that I write, is that our voice has very often been muffled or been silenced in some way. Now, that's our choice. We do that for a variety of reasons. But often using our voice in a book is about empowerment, is about finding ourselves again. It's about saying, I will not be defined by someone else or a previous circumstance. I am going to now sit in my power and use my voice to illuminate what I need to for the people who need my message. And I think that is one of the biggest things that all my writers have done. And it's beautiful, and it's a huge transition, from when you first begin. You don't know at the beginning. And afterwards, you've just learned so much about yourself and your life and your mission. It's really a beautiful process.
It's a beautiful process. However, it's so difficult. Something I heard so often from my mom: "I'll tell you everything, and you'll write it down because I don't know how to." And I imagine you too meet women who carry these powerful stories inside them, maybe their own journey, maybe their mother's or grandmother's untold story, but they feel this deep hesitation, this lack of confidence. There's often a voice whispering, "Who am I to write it? Or is my little story important enough in the grand scheme of things?" What message do you have for that woman right now who feels that fear, but also that quiet longing to honor her own history?
Well, there's so much to that. What I would say is that's doubt. And that doubt is not shining your light brightly. That doubt is coming from another place. And I'll just share a story that's in my book that's very powerful. I was in Brazil with my friend Tatiana, and we were in Sao Paulo. And we had gone to the Corcovado. It was beautiful. We had an amazing experience there. And typical me, I wanted a special memento, so I'm looking for all the cheesy Corcovado statues, and I'm just like really hitting up all of the tourist traps. Like, and Tatiana is Brazilian. She's kind of like, "Oh, okay, Laura, did you find it?" Like, she's kind of like, "Okay, let's go to the next one." She was really patient with me. And so we looked at them all on the top and we looked at them all on the bottom and of the statue when you get down to the street level. And I hear this little voice, and this lady says, "Are you American?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, yes." I turn around, and there is this sweet little a ballerina from Mississippi, and I'm sorry, Missouri. And she said would like to invite us to the ballet that they're dancing there in the city that evening. And I said, oh my gosh, that's wonderful. What are you dancing? And she said the Screw Tape Letters, which is something that I had heard about that C.S. Lewis wrote, which is sort of an allegory about the dark forces in our life and how they can be used against us to make us not as powerful as we are. And so we couldn't make it that night, but we went to Campinas when we could, and we saw them. And even on my YouTube channel, I still have a video of this dance. I took it, and it's this woman who's just powerfully dancing. She's beautiful. And then she has a dance with doubt. And he comes up and he dances with her. And in the ballet, you can see that she's giving her power over to him. And then she tries to escape, and he catches her again. And she's just in the end hypnotized by the doubt. And after I saw that dance, I realized how insidious that doubt is. It's very important to know that the things that are planted in our heart are there for a reason, to tell that story, whether it's to your family, whether it's to a world of followers who are very interested in your mission. But that is the voice to listen to pay attention to, and not honor the other voice, which will always try to dissuade, discourage, distract. Those are mostly the main reasons why people don't get it written. The other thing I would say is, it's fun, okay? Like, I put the fun, I like to say, back in nonfiction. It is a very fun experience. It also can be very hard, but it's also very fun to get to the center of your story, to really cross that check mark off your list of things that you really want to get done. It will nourish your soul in ways that you can't even expect. The other thing I need to say is about trauma. Very often, the business people that I talk about, sometimes they've survived a bit of trauma. But there's also these major stories like Beata, your mother, right? Or my father. And you get to the point, and when I was interviewing people, all over the world, I've done tastemakers, for the LA Times, and I interviewed people and helped people at Entertainment Television tell their story, in celebrities and that type of thing. What you come up against is this. It's not really as much of an unwillingness as a not being able to tap into those memories. In my dad's case, when he couldn't, he said, I will answer every question you have. But when he didn't have the answers, he defaulted to the general history of the time. And allowing them to have their own process of recollection is very important. And ourselves, allow yourself that, because maybe you won't be able to answer every one of your questions, but it might be part of your process to look at this history, look at the circumstances, and then you'll get beyond that, and you'll get deeper into answering these questions. So I think safety is very important. You need to know you're in a safe space. My father and I had that discussion, Dad and I. I'm like, Dad, listen, this is really rough stuff. I get it. If you don't want to answer my question, pass on it. And he just looked at me with like the bluest eyes I will ever see in this world and say, Laura, I am going to answer every single one of your questions. And he truly did in the way he knew how. So very often what you might have to do if you're telling your own story or your mother's story, a very sacred story, is you might have to do a little bit of research. We love primary research, primary witnesses, accounts. Mine's mostly taught in letters, told in letters between my dad and I, my grandma, who I never knew, and her letters, a grandpa's journals that I never knew, other people who I would correspond with to get to the heart of the story. They're told in letters. Letters are very important. And, when you do that, you'll ask more questions that might loosen up that little bit of doubt, that little bit of resistance, because it really is resistance. And you will meet resistance strongly when you're on the right path. You just do.
Oh, we are back. Sorry, I had a little drag of internet here. You say joy is a choice. Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning in Captivity. How you talk about feeling comfortable and feeling safe environment. How do your clients' stories of survival echo this lesson that everything can be taken but our attitude?
Yes, I wrote a screenplay for an adaptation. I adapt books. I'm also a screenwriter, and it was Beyond the Rivers of Babylon, a survivor of the Farhud, which is the Holocaust in Iraq. And he was a young boy who escaped um, in a river, on a river, and he was smuggled out of Baghdad at that time to live a life of freedom, first in Iran and then in Israel. So it was a brutal program where in April where so many Jews died. And it was during the Passover, it was even during their holy days. And again, you've never met a more joyful man. Joseph Samuels is his name. And he is just, at the beginning of the screenplay, he's in prayer with his wife, who's been married to for 63 years. And the prayer is about thanking God for the ability to see, for ears and the ability to hear and listen, and the ability to speak and be understood, and just the basic, simple things that we all take for granted, all of a sudden are now just front and center, not taken for granted. I mean, my dad's story started with these benches. My dad made these benches with us when we were kids. I mean, these benches, we just made them. It's just like, oh, we're just making this bench. You don't know why. You don't understand what they are. You're just, it's just something your dad does. I'm sure there's a thing your dad used to do or your mom used to do. I mean, maybe it's baking cookies or whatever, but there was a story behind it. And my daughter was one, and it was her first birthday. And she steadied herself. She had made the bench with my dad too. So he made it with us. Now he's making it with his grandkids. And she steadied herself. She was learning how to walk. She steadied herself on the bench. And my brother was there. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. And he pointed at the bench and said, oh, that's a concentration camp bench. And it was the first time I ever heard that. Our family never talked about it. I said, what are you talking about, Mike? And he said, ask Dad. And so that's how our story started, was, Dad, can you please tell me about the first wooden bench you made? And it comes to the fact that when they were taken prisoner, the very simple torture was there was no place to sit. So as you can imagine, that is pretty profound. And so every simple thing is just taken so not for granted. Just everything is beautiful. Literally everything is beautiful when you've survived something like that. And in my own walk, this book has been so great. It's the Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. I was so heartbroken during my walk of darkness and a part of my time in life. I didn't know, I knew Dad, he was so joyful. He had that thing. He had the ability to choose joy no matter what. I was not there. I try, I do my best, but I needed to learn more. And this book taught me so much about that, because the choice of joy is really about not letting anyone define you, or a circumstance define you, or a situation. You're bigger than that. And your thoughts, we have lots of thoughts. They're not all helpful. So when we have a joyous perspective, when we're able to take a look at life, we can be more empowered to choose the attitudes and decisions that are going to get us to the next level of our life. And we're just going to be more expansive, have more expansive thoughts, see more opportunities. Joy does not cloud your mind like discouragement, for instance, which was very difficult for me at certain points in my life in the mud puddle. And so joy clarifies, and it brings a lot of peace.
Joy is a choice that sounds so simple but feels absolutely monumental some days. In positive psychology, they talk about affective forecasting errors. How we often overestimate how unhappy bad events will make us. Is choosing joy about actively counteracting this tendency? And how do you practice choosing joy?
Well, I think it has something to do with this idea of the pause. This idea of, when we're all in it. Life is life. It's like, anything can happen, right? But I love this idea of pausing, to give yourself space to be able to really respond and not react to things, to see things in ways that maybe you hadn't thought of before. One of the practices of this is this idea of, when you think, you're living your life and you think something bad's happened, unless it's like really, really, really bad's happened. And instead of making your mind up about it, you take like the 3-day pause. And before you decide that it's bad, of course, at the end of 3 days, you're fully able to say it's terrible, right? But there's usually a seed of good that's in a bad situation that can help you see some opportunity there that might not have been there before, or that you might not be aware of in a snap decision or a snap way of seeing. And, when we don't exercise our joy muscle, when we don't exercise this ability that we have to pause, to simply notice what we're noticing, we do give a lot of our power away to circumstances, situations, and we can allow others to have an undue effect on us. And I think that is very, very important, to be able to relax and be able to choose joy and know you're doing it. It's okay. It's okay. Notice what you're doing. Oh, this is a situation where I could be very negative right now, or I could have a more upbeat look at it. And it's not Pollyanna at all. I think one of the most difficult moments for me was during my divorce. I was put through like a test, right, for what I was going to do. Like they were trying to define, the council was trying to define who I was going to be in my life. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to, keep doing my writing, and I wanted to do screenwriting. But the other side was like really wanting me to take a test. So they wanted me to be like, okay, you're going to do this graphic design that you've always done in your life. You're going to do this. They were trying to dictate what I was going to do and be with my life. And instead of being in that situation of taking that test and answering the questions they had, they're basically like, what do you want to be? I'm like, I want to be a writer. And they're like, oh, that's not on any of my charts. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not my problem. And, just kind of responding in a way that was like making it more fun and a little bit freeing. I got through it in a way that was very empowering, because I wasn't going to let my life be defined by the outcome of a test that somebody else thought I should take and a job that somebody else thought I should have, even though there wasn't a clear path forward at that time with how I was going to make my life be what I had dreamt it to be. And that's why vision is so important in our life. If you don't have a vision, then you don't know what you're going for. So the joy is maybe a little elusive, So when you clarify your vision, I think that is very, very helpful. Because when you're making steps to get to what you love, joy comes.
You say there is a surprisingly easy tough. Now we hear so much about resilience, grit, mental fortitude, often presented as this incredibly hard climb. Psychologists often link resilience to things like strong social support and cognitive reprisal. Is your easy way something different? Share your wisdom with us.
About resilience, I think that resilience can be pretty hard fought, actually. I don't know that anyone is resilient without having gone through at least a mud puddle. I wish I could be like, you could go to the store and buy some resilience and you're fine. But the experience of going through something like that is in my walk something I never do alone. A lot of people have belief in a higher power, and that's basically what my strength comes from. It is not mine alone. It is something that I believe that's bigger than me, that gives me the ability to use my intuition and my intellect in ways that help me overcome very difficult circumstances or incredible odds. And I have taken that walk of faith with my dad as well, my entire family. They had an incredible faith that got them through. Viktor Frankl also is a good example of that. There's a way of seeing the world where you don't have to feel like everything is on your shoulders alone. There are situations, circumstances, and all kinds of things that can happen to us that we can give over to that higher power. We can give over to the universe that has much more ability to help us find solutions and get the kind of aid we need. At the beginning of my story, I'm in Los Angeles, and I am about to go on this incredible research trip that I had no money for, that I figured out a way to go. I'd previously never taken more than 2 weeks vacation in my life because I was working. And I'm going to take 5 weeks. I'm going to go to Australia and Indonesia and research some settings of the book. And I'm at a winery at a 60th birthday party for a friend. And it's a huge event. There's lots of people there. And I don't know everybody. I just know a few people. But it was wonderful. And it's time for me to leave. And this older lady came up to me. And she said, I've been wanting to meet you all night. I know you're taking a big journey. And I want to let you know that I have a prayer that I think you're going to need. And I was like, oh, okay. I thought maybe she had a little too much to drink. I thought this should be interesting. I'm like, okay. But very kindly, I listened to her. And she says, a very simple prayer, and it's changed my life. And I said, okay. And she said, I want to pray it with you. And she said, Lord, bring me the people I need and bring me to the people who need me. And we prayed that together. And I took that prayer with me. And that's what happened. I was taken to places and people who would know things that there was absolutely no way of me knowing, to put the pieces of the bigger story of my dad's POW experience together that he didn't even know. So it's just a beautiful idea. And it's a beautiful thing when we realize we're not alone. We truly are not alone. Whatever that looks like, whatever you call the higher power, if you call it the universe or whatever, there, nature, there's wisdom all around us, and we are not alone.
We are not alone. Schindler's List red coat symbolizes hope in despair. What's your visual metaphor for your resilience?
I'm so glad you asked me this. It's called A Little Bag of Hope. And after my dad died, which was very difficult, obviously, for me, because I didn't get the story written in his lifetime. And that was very difficult for me. I had a very dear friend, Tatiana, again, the lady from Brazil, who I had met, and she invited me to come to Brazil. I was rebuilding my writing career and needed some time. I couldn't write the book anymore. At this point, I've been writing the book for decades. The book actually has taken about 39 years to write. And it will be published in August 15th. Finally, but there was just so many starts and stops. There was technology and all kinds of things I had to sort out. And so I was very tired when I got to Sao Paulo. And I realized that I forgot to pack my underwear on the plane. And so the first thing we did when I landed in Sao Paulo was go to a mall, and, I got my underwear. And I bought it, and the lady hands me the bag, and the bag was this white bag with red letters of hope that spelled the word hope, and a golden little, ribbons for me to carry it with. And I turned to Tatiana and I held the bag up and I said, "I've got a little bag of hope." And she stepped outside of the store and she pointed to the marquee and she's like, "That's the name of the store." And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was just so lovely because I needed it. I mean, I was just really at the bottom, one of the bottom times, probably. There were many, but that was a pretty bad one. I just helped my mom through Dad's death. They've been married 62 years. I still didn't have all the answers I needed. He obviously, our earthly relationship was through. And she didn't want to go on. How do you have a second chapter when you're 89 years old, in life? So really helped her through her mud puddle. My daughter had broken up with her boyfriend. I was helping her through her mud puddle. And I was still pretty in mine. I was just newly divorced and working things out. So, I was kind of like, maybe the story won't get written. I'm just like, maybe it was just too big for me. But I would discover on that trip in Brazil, it was just the beginning. It was just the opening salvo of what incredible inspiration would be sent to me that way, to keep going. And that was in 2016. So that was a while ago. Yeah.
Ghostwriting. So let's go into ghostwriting, because you're also a ghostwriter, and it requires a lot of empathy. What's the hardest story you've channeled for a client, and how did it change you?
That's a tough one. Let me think. I think one of them was true crime. I believe I was very good at writing it because although I didn't write, I didn't have quite the same experience. I had been subjected to the extreme kinds of manipulation and those types of things, to the point where my own reality was being questioned, like, where I was kind of like, gaslighting, I guess what you call it now. So I had been through a similar experience. But yeah, what really changed me about, going through that process was, I feel like I'm brave to a certain extent, I really am. But the bravery of others just constantly amazes me.
Hmm.
Just
Maya,
constantly.
Maya Angelou wrote, I know why the caged bird sings after years of silence. How does years of silence or years of untold stories heal?
That's a great question. Um, well, I think there's just beauty in articulating and healing, in finally articulating the things that need to be said, that you want to say, um, because the cost is so great. The cost is so great, and once you speak, and once you learn what your story is, and you learn what your message is, you don't want to stop, right? And I feel like it's visceral. These stories and the energy of the stories, when we keep them bottled up inside. I mean, Louise Hayes talks about it. Our physique suffers. And in my case, every time I had very serious silencing issues, or issues where I didn't feel I could speak, which was my own perception. Obviously, you can always speak, but I would always have some kind of malady. I had horrible heart situations happen. I had very bad digestive situations happen. So I think, it just feels better, right? It's the truth. You're honest. Being silent is a little bit not dishonest, but it's not being truly authentically who you are. So when you walk in, you own your power, you understand that it is your voice, and that I am using my voice, and you use it. You are healthier, you are stronger, and it's a muscle, just like using joy, right? Now you know how to sing, so you can't stop. They can't stop you, and now you're using your voice all the time, and it's very it's beyond empowering. I think empowering is one way of looking at it, certainly. But it's also healing. It's beautiful, because we're here to know who we are, right? And to be fully known, or known as much as we want to be. And that's also a little bit about what I've written about is, and this is an issue when you're writing, right? Like, how much do I put on the page? What do I want to say? What don't I want to say? And you don't know until you do it. Like, you can't, we wear so many hats as a writer. We wear a creative hat, we wear an editor's hat, and then there's a publishing hat that a writer wears. Well, the creative hat is, you don't want to edit anything. You've got a story, some things you've kept in, some things you don't know how to say. So we're going to say everything. We're going to go there. We're going to go there. Okay. And then in the editing part, when we're creating a narrative, some things we might need, some things we won't need, some things we won't want to have on the page. That's absolutely fine. It's such a part of writing. So you just peel it back, right? It's like Michelangelo. He has the marble, and he takes away some of the marble. Well, you've got the marble of your story. You've got the beautiful marble of your story that needs to be created. And then you can pare away the things that you might be either uncomfortable or not wanting to share. But these things don't stop you, right? And that goes back to the true crime that I was writing about. You just really, you write everything down, and then you pare everything back, and it's just a beautiful process. It's a building up, and it's also kind of gives your brain a little bit of permission to be you. It takes the pressure off. It's like talking to a friend. Okay, that's how I work with people. We get on coffee talks every week, and I've got my coffee here. I haven't drank it yet, but it's right here. And it's just a way to to go about having a conversation. Pretend if you're having a really hard time writing the book, pretend you're talking to someone over coffee, whether that's your mother, whether that's your sister, a trusted friend. Just pour yourself a cup of coffee and start talking to them. I know some people feel much more comfortable telling their story on a phone recording. Not everybody writes. So there's all kinds of ways to tell it.
Anne Frank's diary sold 30 million copies. If you could give every listener one sentence to write at the start of their own memoirs, what would it be?
That's a great question. The day my life changed,
Why this sentence?
Because that's the heart of every story. It's all about the day everything changed for you. What was the moment everything changed for you? When you reflect on that gives you a good window in to the story. It gives you a good window into your own point of view, which is your voice. Why you chose it. I think it's very helpful to ponder that. Not everybody can answer that. I mean, in screenwriting, it's interesting. There's this concept of starting a screenplay en media res, which is in the middle of the action. And I think this, of course, the movie that does that, I think the best and the funniest is Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Harrison Ford's character is being chased by that giant boulder. We don't know him. We don't know who he is. But we kind of care that he's not going to get squished by this boulder, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Like, what's your boulder? What are we rooting for with you? And that's at the heart of every really good story.
And the heart of a really good story is a story written by Jamil, who's joining us today to ask some of her most pressing questions. So over to you, Jamil.
Thank you so much, B. So, hello, Laura. I hope you're enjoying the conversation.
I am. Thank you, Jamil. I hope you are too.
Yes. So, your story about navigating those tough mud puddle moments in life is so powerful. Thinking about that resilience you've shown and considering your incredible journey as a writer and entrepreneur, what advice would you give to other women out there hoping to build their careers or start their own entrepreneurial paths?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing is to have a clear vision, not just for your business. Of course, that's very important, but it has to be a full spectrum vision, because no one wants to be successful in business and doesn't want to be successful in their relationships. So, we really need this full vision for our life. It needs to be palpable. It needs to be beyond just, at the beginning of the year, it's New Year's, I'm just going to write this. Oh, this is what I want to do. I want to grow my business 20%. It has to have a heartbeat. It has to have a pulse. So when you think about your business, think about how it's going to impact the world. Who is it going to help? Who is that lady or group of people who are the people that are out there that you're going to impact? Like, see their faces, understand their needs, feel it in your heart. And then also, like, your relationships. What do you want your relationships to be? Who do you want to be with, and why? And what does that look like? Do you want to have a big family event or something like that? And with health, what do I want to be health wise? Do I want to try and run a little bit this year? Do I want to walk every day? Do I want to make a big hike? maybe a very big hike as a goal of, and then, time, money, freedom. What do I want to be doing with my money? Do I want to be working a certain amount of hours so that I have the freedom to care for a family member? All of that impacts, because if we don't know what our vision is, then we can't get there simply. I mean, I think what they say is, if you don't know your dream, any road will get you there. So be very clear about what you love. Ask yourself, what do I love for my business? What do I love for my life?
It makes me think about the skills that help us not just survive those tough times, but actually thrive in our careers as women. Building on that idea of driving through challenges rather than avoiding them, what would you say are the top three soft skills that all career driven women, in your opinion, should really cultivate?
That's a great question. For me, especially as a ghostwriter, and a mom, and a grandma too, is empathy. Empathy is huge. In writing, I write for people. I understand their voice. I write for them in their voice. So I really need to empathize with their walk. It's something I really align with very well. It comes very second nature. Along that is compassion. And the next really great one would be grace. And I think grace really allows us to get away from the idea that all our assumptions are right about a situation or something like that. So it allows us to see more clearly a situation. So those would be the three.
When you're faced with a specific problem, what's your go-to approach for figuring it out and finding a solution?
Yeah, that is a very good question. I guess what I do is the first thing when I see a problem, this kind of gets to the grace part of the other question. When I see a problem, I ask myself, what is true? What is true about the problem? And the reason I do that is because I want to make sure that, again, that there aren't some assumptions clouding my vision of the problem. So here's the problem, and then say what's true about the problem, and then also what's really true about the problem. And then I go to actually prayer. I will pray about it and see if I can have my eyes opened in ways they're not, that I'm not prejudiced in one way or the other about going about it. I make sure to take the space and time I need to take care of it. Snap decisions, reactions are rarely wise. So it's very important to respond and give yourself time to respond. So that's pretty much the way I go about problem solving.
And that's good. Are you working on any new exciting projects right now, Laura?
Yes, I'm working on a great project for a lady, a CEO. I'm working on a project for a politician. I'm working on several other projects. But the most exciting project for me personally is my memoir coming out in August 15th. And I can scoop. This is the cover for it now. So that's it. It's just been developed. You can't really see all of it right now, but that's it. And I'm very excited about where that's going to go. I love the fact that the ability to tell a story is so universal, that we're all in the same process of telling our story. We're all the same about it. Essentially, we're all nervous about it. I didn't know how to do this story, and Sometimes it's hard when it's your own stuff, but yet I help everybody tell their stories, right? So it's very good to be able to know that it's all just human nature. All these sort of stumbling blocks that we have, they're very common and very human, and everybody goes through it. So we just need the tools to get through it.
Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "Women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are in hot water." In life, how are you in hot water, Laura? How are you brewing?
Well, I think I am brewing pretty good. I think that was the part that I was talking about a little bit earlier, where I think when I was brewing a bit, I think when people were trying to define me and trying to tell me who I should be professionally, that felt very much outside of, gave me less power, like they were choosing my life for me. I think when I stewed in that tea bag long enough, I found the courage to find my voice in ways I never had before. So I was kind of like, I was just okay with putting myself out there. I was okay with being bold. I was okay with understanding that, yeah, I am capable. I have the knowledge I need to do exactly what I need to do. And it started in that moment, and it developed over time. And one of the biggest things that I think was my struggle in telling my personal story, and then also in getting, some of the puzzle pieces together for my own life about love and happiness. I've since remarried, by the way, so I'm just very, very, very happy in that regard. Is that you just, you're just able to appreciate yourself and your authentic self more, and give yourself credit to know that you do have all the answers. You do. You have way more power than you know. You have way more power than you know.
What is the number one book you can sit and think, "Oh, I wish I read before I started my career"?
Yeah, that would be Brave Thinking by Mary Morrissey. She is just so gifted at being able to help people not only clarify their vision, but also think bravely and act boldly. So it's not just about clarifying your thoughts, but it's also about taking action. And I think if I had read that earlier, I might have accomplished some of my goals and been more clear on them. So I think that is my definite number one must read.
Let's imagine that you could meet anyone in the world for a private breakfast. Who would it be, and where would you choose to meet?
Well, that would definitely be the Dalai Lama in Yogyakarta in Indonesia. And it would be because I read his book, The Book of Joy, and it really changed my life. I really was able to find joy again. I think I called it the dark hole of despair or something. I mean, it was so bad. The mud puddle was pretty bad. It was pretty big, mud puddle. And I had faith. I had the ability to be in relationship with God and try and work through it, but I wasn't able to get there. There was so many things that I did to get to the other side of that mud puddle, and that was one of them. And it was just wonderful. And Desmond Tutu also wrote a wonderful book. What he ordered, with Dalai Lama. Was the Book of Joy, but Desmond Tutu also wrote a great book with Mofo, his daughter, called The Book of Forgiving, which is another thing that I really needed to work on to release a lot of pain. And and I just want to thank him. Like, I would be in Yogyakarta because that's where I began really writing this story.
And for our last question, can you please give us your favorite life lesson quote?
My life lesson quote is kind of long. It's just so funny. Okay, so I'm going to give you two, if that's okay. I have one from my dad, which is that the queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. He gave me that quote when I was thinking I didn't have any power and was just very, very, very confused about things. And when I got very, very clear, I said, I felt like I was in the chess game of my life, Dad. I was like, what advice do you have to give me? And he said, Laura, the queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. So I thought that was really amazing. But the next quote that I have is, the next time something in your life happens when you are tempted to say, this is bad, when that happens, notice it. Then press the pause button and wait 3 days before you decide it's bad, before you allow yourself to get upset about it. During those 3 days, turn the volume up on your curiosity and ask yourself this question repeatedly. What possible good might be derived from this situation? And that's from Mary Morrissey. And it's about, curiosity is the cure to overwhelm. You just get curious about it. You just get curious about it. You're like, okay, let's learn, let's look at this in a different way. And it gives you much more empowering thoughts.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible insights and personal journey with us today. And it's truly been inspiring to hear your perspective on navigating life's mud puddles. And now I'll hand it back over to Beata to wrap things.
Thank you, Jamil. Thank you, Laura, for your great answers. Here is another great quotation by Eleanor Roosevelt. Well-behaved women rarely make history. So I'm wondering, Laura, is there going to be a second book about your mom's memoirs? Or is she too well-behaved to make it?
There is a second. She is in this book. So she's very much in this book. Mom is very much in this book. But there will be a book too, also about my aunt. She was separated from the family and survived the war in London. So most of my family was in Asia and Indonesia. She was in London. And so her story is also very interesting. And that would be the second book in the series. What will be the series? Yeah.
We can't wait to hear them all, to read them all. As you mentioned, it's going to be your first book, your Dear Laura book is going to be published in August.
August?
Will be, yes,
yeah,
we will
August 15th, 2025, the 80th anniversary of VJ Day.
Fabulous. And that's it from episode 184 of the PhD live stream. Thanks to our guest, Laura Elliott. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a positivity hack delivered, follow Woman on It and turn on notifications. And next week, we're going to be joined by Grace Redman. As always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking Only and goes, look for something positive in each day. Look for joy in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. Today is your day to hug the future, hug the positivity you want, Woman on It. Thank you.